Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Great. Well, welcome to one of the last breakout sessions of the day, Federal Policy Solutions. My name is Christina Rice. I'm an attorney in the Food Law and Policy Clinic, and we're one of the hosts of the conference. And I just want to thank all of you for coming here and being with us over the last 2 days and sticking with us for one of the last panels. I think we've covered a lot of information over the last 2 days, and if you were here on Monday, it's been the entrepreneur workshop, and we've learned about things that can be done on the farm level, retail level, and schools. We've learned a lot about different areas that we can really reduce food waste and help meet the USDA and EPA goal of reducing food waste by 50% by 2030. And today we're going to hear what can be done on the federal level and what agencies and the House Agriculture Committee, what they're doing in their departments and their areas to meet these goals and reduce food waste. So in the sake of time, I'm not going to read all their bios. We all have that in our programs, and I want to go ahead and get started. So first, we are going to hear from Elise with the USDA.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's nice to be here. So I'm also going to click along pretty quick here because we only have 10 minutes to get through all this great information. So reducing food loss and waste is fundamental to USDA's mission. It just covers all of our agencies. Every single one of our agencies has something to do to reduce food loss and waste. And we take this mission very seriously. But I'm going to step back a little bit, and I'm going to talk about, start big, think about what government's role is. First of all, government's role is to set your national priorities. We set the stage, national priorities. And I think USDA and EPA, when we joined together last September to set the first national goal to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by 2030, we helped set the stage of what all of us are gathered here today to achieve. Once you set that stage, once you set that national priority, then we start to embed targets to meet that goal throughout all of our policies and programs. So you start to get that trickle down through all of the federal programs. We build up additional scaffolding on this goal through commitments we've made through the Sustainable Development Goals, through the G20 on food loss and waste, through the G7, through FAO, through UNEP. So you start to build this priority base. And once you do that, you can push this out through a lot of different programs. So another thing government has to do, and I think it's something we forget about here in the United States, we fund those infrastructures and we maintain fair markets. So when you talk about food loss and waste, and you think about it in the developing context, we forget about what we've achieved here when we talk about our roads, our railroads, our shipping, our terminal markets. We talk about storage on the farm. Think about the Secretary Vilsack just last year expanded the Farm Storage Facility Loan Program to provide low-cost loans to farmers to store and expand the list of products. Those kind of infrastructures help us to reduce food loss and waste in the United States. And then we think about contracting. I don't know if you were listening to Tristan this morning, and he was talking about the problem with contracting and how contracts could be written in such a way that some of the risk of production is passed down, mostly is borne by farmers, and how some of the contracting risks can lead to excess product. So we think about how do we enforce, how do we draw up fair contracting, and what is the role for government in helping to create fair markets, fair contracting. One thing that came out of Tristan's work and his, when they were looking at justice, food justice, and contracting buyers in the developed world, in the US and the UK, and how they're buying in the developing world some of these commodities, one thing that they revealed was that US buyers, US contractors, have a much fairer contracting system to the farmers in the developing world. And it's something as small that we buy on the basis of volume versus weight. I may have flipped that, but it's something like that. So just little things when you're looking at contracting, that can have a big impact. So these fundamental issues that are within USDA's mission statement, they can have a big impact. Another thing USDA and government can help do is to get incentives right. And we've already talked about that in the United States, how this incentive structure has been so fundamental in making the United States a leader in food recovery. It's the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act, that limited liability. It's the federal tax deductions that help to spur, to help to fuel food donations in this country. It's the U.S. Federal Food Donation Act of 2008. Probably a lot of people don't know about that. But U.S. government facilities, we have to give procurement preference to contractors who do promise to recover food after an event and give it to donate it to needy families. At USDA, part of getting those incentives right is making sure that we haven't set up any constraints to businesses that want to do the right thing. We have to make sure that we're not putting roadblocks in their way. So something we just recently did is we streamlined procedures for donating misbranded meat and poultry. You know, it used to be if you had some kind of mislabel on you labeled it incorrectly, it's not a safety issue, but maybe the weight is wrong, there's something wrong with the label. It used to be you'd have to take that back and you'd have to relabel it, even if you wanted to just donate it. So imagine how many manufacturers wanted to go through all that extra expense of bringing it back, rebranding, you know, relabeling it, and then donating it. So we've streamlined the ability of manufacturers to just donate without relabeling. Another thing government, and USDA in particular, can do is to provide research and development for new technologies, new methods for prolonging shelf life or for finding new value-added products out of the byproducts of processing food. Some of these technologies for extending shelf life include powdered fruit and vegetable-based coatings to inhibit spoilage of fresh fruits and vegetables, new packaging that reduces moisture loss and extends shelf life of fruits and vegetables. We have new technologies that turn these byproducts into nutritious foods, like grapeseed flour that was developed in Napa Valley that you can add to cookies or whatever, and it has very high nutrition value. Also worked on some bars that are made out of beer after you make the beer. So you can take Tristan Stewart's toasted ale, make that, and then you can take the remains from that and make it into a little bar that also is very nutritionally superior. They say that it has more protein than quinoa. So you could be drinking your toasted ale and eating your little regrained bar at the same time. You'd have a complete circle there. We also have developed technologies to take cosmetically challenged fruits and vegetables and turn them into something that we all want to eat. We've developed out of those giant yams that you find in fields. They look like they're explosive devices. They're actually giant yams that no one wants to eat. So we've developed a process we can turn that into something tasty called Yamco. It doesn't sound so tasty, but it actually is. We can create 100% health bars from undersized fruits and vegetables, and that product is being sold all over the world, and it's also eligible for school meals programs. One of my favorite new technologies that's being developed out of the lab in Albany, California, they're calling them nutrition batteries. And it's a new infrared methodology for drying fruits and vegetables and turns them into these incredibly crispy chips without any oil whatsoever. And it retains all the nutritional value. So not only are they tasty and nutritious, but also it reduces the transportation costs because you're not trucking around all that water that comes in your traditional apple. You can have this crispy thing. In USDA, another thing that I like is that many people have talked about the necessity of figuring out some way to process the bounty that we have coming out of our fields. If you can't sell it and you can't get it into the fresh market, you have a lot left over, and you can't get it into the processed market because you don't have the contract that makes it easy for you to do that. How can we get processing into those situations that's kind of this flexible processing capability? USDA did work on a mobile processing for peanuts coming out of Haiti. And what we wanted to do there is we brought the mobile processing into the fields of Haiti where the peanuts were. And you wanted to process those peanuts very quickly because of the toxin. You know, all these peanuts can have a toxin in them, and if you process it quickly, you reduce that toxin content, and so then you can get it to people who need it. But I think these mobile processing facilities is a new avenue for us to explore. Okay, at USDA, we also have a mandate to educate consumers and disseminate information about nutritious foods and about safe foods. And so one thing we've done, we've worked with the Cornell Food Lab, Cornell University, and with FMI, Food Marketing Institute, on Food Keeper app. And it's an app that everyone can download. And using this app, you can go to the grocery store, you can say, look at that strange fruit, look at that whatever. How long will that stay in my refrigerator? How long could I freeze that? Could I freeze that? You can go onto this Food Keeper app and get all that good information, help you manage your purchases. We also put up, for the first time ever, we have ChooseMyPlate.gov. And ChooseMyPlate is the infographics, the heuristics that we use to educate consumers about the dietary guidelines for Americans. And you know, it's My Plate. So MyPlate.gov. For the first time, we have up there now an infographic on food waste. And it's saying, come on, if you want to afford a nutritious diet, one easy step is stop throwing away so much food. You know, we know that a family of four wastes about $370 a month on food that's just thrown away. If you save that money, you buy healthy, nutritious food with it, you're going to have a better diet. So we have that information and tips for how you can reduce food loss and waste within your homes up there on the ChooseMyPlate.gov. I think I'm running out of time, so I did want to mention, before I went too far, just reiterate the announcement I made this morning, that we've heard, as many people have said during this conference, that what we really need right now, as all of these efforts are proliferating across the country, as we have the grassroots efforts, we have innovators, we have business, we have schools, we have government, we have everyone gathering together, coming together to try to take on food loss and to reduce food loss and waste in this country. What we really need is a central place where we can share our experiences, we can keep this conversation going, we can share data, we can share best practices, we can share successes, we can share failures, we can have a place to do that. So we have come together with EPA to create a public-private partnership to get that national virtual resource center established. And I would like to just, again, thank all the members of this public-private partnership, because I think this list is impressive, and it really covers the landscape here on who's joining together. We have the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, Feeding America, the Food Marketing Institute, the Grocery Manufacturers Association, the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy, the National Consumers League, the National Restaurant Association, the Natural Resources Defense Council, Sustainable America, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the World Resource Institute, and the World Wildlife Fund. So look for this. We'll be putting this together. We'll be doing the initial launch will be before the end of the year, and then we will keep building this for years to come and create this good national conversation. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for hanging in there, continuing to hang in there. This has been a powerful past 2 or 3 days for many of us, and I have just learned so much, and so I want to thank you, and I want to let you know that your voice matters. We began this journey many years back. US EPA and USDA didn't start working in the area of wasted food and food waste in the last couple of years. It's been a journey that we've been on for some time. And we are just so elated to see all of the momentum and all of the energy that is it's just been endless in the last few months, especially since the announcement was made. And to be able to stand with USDA today to announce another milestone step, and that is the Virtual Resource Center, just gives me, I'm very happy right now, and I'm just so thankful that we are able to work on this project, not only with USDA, but with all of you. And I encourage you to remain actively engaged in it and take advantage of the resources that will be available in the Virtual Resource Center, which will be revealed in the next few months. EPA's mission is to protect human health and the environment. And we know that in order to have healthy people, we have to have a healthy environment. And in order to have a healthy environment, we have to have healthy people. Food is the ideal place for us to really be able to work and achieve our goals. Today I'm going to briefly touch on a few initiatives that EPA has taken to reduce our nation's food waste and mention some innovations that have inspired me and hopefully will inspire you as well. Next slide, please. So we have several efforts across the agency in the area of the sustainable management of food. We have the Food Recovery Challenge, which was launched in 2011. And this is a key component of our Sustainable Materials Management program. In Sustainable Materials Management, we seek to maximize the use of materials. You've heard the statistics around all of the energy and all of the water and all of the resources that go into growing food and food production. The same exists with many other resources, with our other materials. And so we've been actively engaged in food, and it's been a key component of our Sustainable Materials Management program for some time. And our our Food Recovery Challenge is one of our really flagship efforts under our food work. But we also have some additional tools and resources. We recognize that a lot of food waste and wasted food occurs at the household level. So several years ago, EPA partnered with others and the Food Too Good to Waste tool was developed. The Food Too Good to Waste is a toolkit to help households reduce waste in their kitchens. We all hate to generate waste, but our busy lifestyles sometimes lead us to throw out food that we never got around to eating. How many of you have ever had to throw away something that you put in your refrigerator or you had on your counter and you forgot about it? I would suspect that many of us are as guilty as the family who had the strawberry that you saw in the video earlier today. Well, the Food Too Good to Waste toolkit is one that can help you with really creating practices for your household to minimize your waste production. I lost an aunt who was 107 a few years ago, and her motto was, buy what you're going to eat and eat what you buy. And that still holds true today. And the toolkit can help you with coming up with strategies for your family. We have so many families that are multi-generational, multicultural, and this toolkit can really help you adapt your family's lifestyle in a way that you can reduce the wasted food that you generate. We also announced earlier this year our administrator, who I guess you couldn't tell earlier, is extremely excited about working in the area of reducing food loss and waste. But she launched what is known as the Food Stewards Pledge. And the Food Stewards Pledge is an opportunity to work with organizations like faith-based organizations or Boys and Girls Clubs or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts to really learn how that they can work with their communities to make commitments to reduce both wasted food and hunger using 5 steps. Learn, first of all, about wasted food. Take the pledge, take action, get others involved, and then share your story. To help communities reduce the amount of waste disposed in landfills, you remember Feed People, Not Landfills, that our administrator really loves, and to promote waste prevention and materials reuse across waste generation sectors, we recently posted the Managing and Transforming Waste Streams tool. This is an interactive tool that provides 100 policies and programs from across the country that local planners can use to help them develop local ordinances and incentives, expand programs, develop facilities, and conduct outreach. It's a useful tool for communities looking to tackle their food waste problem. There's also the toolkit for reducing wasted food and packaging. And this toolkit is especially useful for food service establishments. It helps them track the daily amount, the type of, and reason for wasted food and packaging. It automatically creates graphs and data summaries to help identify patterns of waste generation, which can help businesses make strategic changes in their operations. There is also an accompanying guide which provides more information on turning these audit results into action to save money and reduce waste. Many of you also heard in one of the sessions on yesterday about our food mapping tool, which is the food and other organics disposed mapping tool. This tool is really designed to help achieve what you're focused on in this conference this week, that is to move residuals up the food hierarchy. This national tool will allow organizations such as local planners, project developers, and municipalities to identify potential sources of wasted food and to estimate the volume of wasted food in a particular area. Later this summer, we will launch the Anaerobic Digestion website, which will provide a one-stop location for basic information regarding AD for the public, and it will facilitate our ability to provide assistance to municipalities, states, tribes, and other entities who are evaluating AD systems for incorporation into their programs. Finally, there is the Local Foods, Local Places, which helps people create walkable, healthy, economically vibrant neighborhoods through the development of local food systems. This program is sponsored by EPA, USDA, CDC, DOT, the Appalachian Regional Commission, and the Delta Regional Authority. And we also have support from the White House Rural Council. If you'd like additional information on any of these, please see me afterwards and I can give you the contact folks. In the last couple of minutes, next slide, I wanted to share a couple of innovative approaches, and I was actually asked by someone at another venue to share these at this gathering today. One of the great benefits of being in these type settings is to really be able to share with you innovative practices that can be taken and introduced or incorporated in your communities. There are two that I want to share with you today. You may not normally tie the prison system with creative approaches in sustainability. However, the City of Philadelphia prison system started composting its food waste and welcomed the finished product back for use in their prison's orchard program. This program produces fruit for the prison system and for donation, and it provides a job training opportunity for the inmates. They are members of our Food Recovery Challenge, and they are really demonstrating how to make the most out of a valuable resource. You also may have heard about Keene State College, from Christy Cook, who is with Sodexo. They are located in New Hampshire, and they used an innovative marketing campaign, including a spokescarrot, not a spokesperson, but a spokescarrot, who represents the journey every vegetable makes from garden to plate to compost, using creative tabletop messaging and a buffet served entirely of food that would have otherwise gone to waste. Does that sound familiar from this week? These creative approaches help maintain momentum and reduce the amount of food going to waste in their cafeterias. And while we've accomplished a lot together in the area of reducing food, there is a lot more work to be done. It will take collective action from all sectors to work towards this ambitious goal of reducing food loss and waste by 50% in the next 14 years. We know, and you've heard it over and over, that this cannot be the sole jurisdiction of the federal government. As Maddie discussed yesterday, we've developed a collaborative call to action based on your input. Elise announced earlier today our joint effort with many of our stakeholders in the Virtual Resource Center. And we continue to look for ways to assist you and support you in your efforts to reduce food loss and waste.
Was it me?
I think you're up.
Good afternoon. I guess I'm Kevin Smith from the Food and Drug Administration. I work in our Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition in College Park, Maryland. It has been a real pleasure to be here. I've learned so much, and there is a lot for myself personally and our agency to learn in this space. We are relatively new to the world of wasted food and reducing food loss. I think it's pretty safe to say that food loss and reducing food waste and the issues that pertain mainly to resource conservation and sustainability, that's a space that FDA has not traditionally operated in. It's not something that we see as central to our mission to date, but I think that's changing a bit. Because there's no question that something that is central to our mission and our mandate is that ensuring that people everywhere in the U.S. have access to the safest and most wholesome foods possible. And that is linked in many ways to the foundational efforts to reduce food waste and address food insecurity in the U.S. So to that end, FDA is recognizing that there are ways that our policies, our rules, what we do day in, day out, in the food arena have an impact on the ability to divert food from landfills and to make sure that people have access to the food they need. So in that regard, we've become committed to working closely with our federal partners, USDA and EPA, as they are the lead agencies on the food waste reduction initiatives. So we're attempting to increase the awareness within our agency and how we can provide support to this effort. I think we'll have to take a close look at our regulations, our policies, our operating procedures to better understand how they can affect those that are involved in reducing food loss and waste. And there's a lot of those regulations and policies. I think if we can improve the understanding among key stakeholders, including the folks that are at this conference and those that are not, of our efforts to what we do to try to reduce the risk of foodborne illness and injury, and help improve the understanding of where those efforts most significantly interface with food waste reduction initiatives. This is particularly important because we are on the verge of implementing a whole series of new food regulations that have been called for under the Food Safety Modernization Act. There's 7 new significant regulations that have published in the last year that will come into effect over the next couple of years. And whenever there's a new regulation that has, I don't think that the regulations weren't developed much with an eye towards, is this going to potentially increase food waste? Will this decrease food waste? There really wasn't a ton of consideration around that, but I think there's no question that understanding where there's a potential impact that is important. So we're going to do our best to come to a better understanding of that. I think we can explore opportunities where we can educate stakeholders. That includes food producers, food manufacturers, retailers, food recovery operations, and of course the consumer, about practices that can reduce the risk of foodborne illness to the consumer while also reducing the amount of food that is wasted. I think even though they're not the same mission, they can be supportive of one another. Obviously, we have a lot of public health regulatory partners at the state and local level as well as and tribal level, and we believe that if we can encourage our partners to rely on science-based regulations and guidance, that will ultimately promote safe food donation and food rescue efforts. So I think that we have to, the more confidence that folks have in the safety of the food supply, that confidence carries over to increasing the repurposing of food and donating food. If people don't have a lot of confidence in the food that is being purchased and sold and served in commercial establishments, then they're not going to have much confidence in the safety of food that is is donated and provided to those in need. So examining where our mission most directly impacts food waste reduction efforts. One is obviously consumer access to information that helps them make informed decisions about the safety and the quality of their food. That's something we take fairly seriously, so I think that can impact how much food is wasted. Also, of course, we've heard a lot of discussion today in the manner in which packaged foods are date labeled for quality and for safety. We heard a lot of conversation around that note. We know that that is a space that FDA has a role in any solutions that are going to be out there. We have a possibility of enhancing any solution, coming up with helping arrive at solutions, and helping folks stick to what's expected of them. Obviously, the manner in which food is transported, prepared, stored, displayed, and how that may impact the ability to safely donate that food or repurpose that food that is not sold through traditional market channels. That's an important overlap in our mission. The disposition of food that is deemed by growers, producers, manufacturers, retailers, if it's deemed to be misbranded, mislabeled, or of a quality or grade that's not suitable for sale, what can become of that food as opposed to just discarding it? We impound food. We based on a food that is produced in a way that they can't assure is compliant with regulation. We think it's important to make sound decisions about what can become of that food. Can it be rendered safe in a way that maybe not exactly as it was intended from the start, but still be salvaged so as not to be destroyed. And food, there's a lot of food that's subject to recall or market withdrawal because perhaps it's mislabeled or because they fail to disclose a particular ingredient. There's a lot of food recovery organizations operating in that space trying to say, hey, wait, let's try to keep that food. Can we relabel it? Can we reuse it in a different way? Those decisions, I'm trying to encourage our agency to take decisions that aren't only protecting public health, but also are saying, let's find a way to avoid having to just destroy that food and see it as a resource. The other place where I see us having a big impact is because I mentioned that we have a lot of public health partners, and our state, local, and tribal partners. We rely on them to do all the work as it relates to the retail and food service sector, and we've talked a lot here at this conference about rescue and recovery from those sectors. Since we have a long history of working with those partners in the food safety arena, what constitutes appropriate food handling practices, and those agencies look to FDA for guidance. There's a lot of strong relationships we have there. Sometimes strained relationships, but also a lot of history of working to find food safety solutions. To me, that suggests, hey, if there's solutions that require federal, state, local collaboration and effort, why we can bring those relationships to the discussion of food waste reduction. And I think we can if we can build on those relationships, there'll be more success at least from the government perspective. And that's it. Thank you.
My name is Mary Carnegie, and I'm with the House Agriculture Committee, and so I'm kind of representing the different side of the government equation up here, but really pleased to be here. I'm going to start by giving you, next slide, sorry. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of background about the House Agriculture Committee. Some of you may not be all that familiar with it. My boss is Colin Peterson from Minnesota. He's the ranking member of the committee, and the chairman of the committee is Mike Conway from Texas. There are 45 members of the committee. We have 6 subcommittees, and I mention those because maybe all or none of them, depending on how you look at it, impact kind of the food waste space. with the exception of nutrition. I think that one, there's a pretty strong link there. The big piece of legislation that we pass every 5 years is the Farm Bill. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail a little bit later. And when we're not doing the Farm Bill every 5-ish years, I say, because you never really know when a Farm Bill is going to get passed or how that best of intentions is every 5 years. And when we're not doing a Farm Bill, we are doing oversight of USDA programs. Next slide. What's happening on the Agriculture Committee? I'm very excited to say, and you've heard this a little bit, that we had a tremendous hearing with lots of experts in this space that you have all heard from at this conference already. And it was a really bipartisan hearing, which is wonderful. We love to work in that way in the House Agriculture Committee. We followed that up with, because we couldn't have everybody that was working in this space at the hearing, so we followed it up with a food waste fair where we had 12 different booths where you could actually go and talk to the people that are doing innovative things, from DC Central Kitchen to USDA and EPA, and really hear from what's happening in this space. So it was an awesome, awesome day. And of course, as you've heard, Representative Pingree, former member of the Agriculture Committee, is absolutely a leader on this issue, but she can't be the only one. Next slide. And so next steps on food waste. I think we've heard lots of great discussion around the date labeling at this conference. I've been in a ton of excellent meetings talking about that topic in particular, and I really feel that we need federal preemption. This is a place where we absolutely need some legislation. We need to get these states, all the confusion around these different state legislation regs, we need to get them standardized. And in the Harvard, a video that we saw this morning about the Montana milk thing, I'm a dairy farmer's daughter, and that particularly hurts me to see that. And we all have stories about that. And so we absolutely need to figure that piece out. The vehicle is the Farm Bill. And I realize that's not popular with people. I've talked to a lot of people that are not really excited about the Farm Bill, and understandably so, right? It's a massive piece of legislation. It covers commodities to forestry to nutrition. I mean, it's a huge piece of legislation. But part of my job here today is to talk to you about the political reality and what's really happening. And I'm here to tell you that while we'd love for date labeling to rise to the top of what Congress is really concerned about, the reality is it's probably going to get included in some other legislation, and it's probably not going to happen this year given the election. So I understand that that's not the most popular thing to say, but I want you guys, I feel like it's my job to kind of tell you that. And the other thing is that I've heard some folks kind of speak negatively about the Farm Bill, and I understand, and I would encourage you, if you feel strongly about changing the Farm Bill, to go out there and fight for those changes, absolutely. But it's also politically feasible to make incremental changes in nutrition programs and in commodity programs and in food waste. And I also want everybody to know that the SNAP program is under attack in the Farm Bill. And nutrition programs are under attack in the Farm Bill. And we're all friends here, and we need to continue to fight for those good programs. And I hope that I don't hear people attack those nutrition programs and SNAP. We all need to be together, unified in moving farm policy nutrition programs together. The Farm Bill is politically very divisive. Again, we've heard that, but reducing food waste and getting recovered food to people instead of a landfill shouldn't be a politically divisive issue, and it cannot be a political divisive issue. We need to work together on this. I see food recovery as a topic that can really bridge the agriculture community and you all, and that is an awesome thing. This whole topic has energized me like I haven't been energized in a long time on Capitol Hill. You can get a little... It's really easy to get worn down when you work on Capitol Hill. I do livestock policy, like that's my thing. And my boss called me one day and wanted to talk about date labels. And now I'm the food waste person. And that's how it works, but it's been awesome because I've met so many amazing people in this space and leaders that are in this room. And so we all need to continue working together. I think there was a lot of people that looked at the Agriculture Committee a little sideways when we said we're going to bring NRDC in to the Agriculture Committee to testify. But I have learned a tremendous amount from Dana, and I hope she has learned a little bit of something from me too. And so this is an area we can build bridges, we can open doors. Let's continue to think of food recovery in that way. And we are committed to this on the Agriculture Committee. But we also need to talk to people that we don't normally talk to. And Shelley Pingree is an absolute rock star on this issue on Capitol Hill, but we can't just talk to her. We have to talk to every single member on the House in order to elevate this issue and get people thinking about this. I really believe that this is an issue that touches everyone. And so we need to talk to not just our friends about this issue. So I hope you will all help me with that. We have consensus. I think we're building consensus around date labels. And let's see if I can move on to another slide. No, not yet. We'll go back. Sorry. Consensus around date labeling, I think, is pretty key when we're talking about moving legislation forward. I think that the industry, and I applaud the efforts of FMI and GMA. I think that's wonderful. I think industry needs to come together in order to figure out the quality side of this equation. I think the safety side is going to be harder. I think we have to stand behind sound science when we develop those dates. We absolutely have to. And not every problem that has been discussed in this conference needs a legislative fix. Thank goodness for that. Because we don't want Congress, quite frankly, mucking up a lot of this stuff. There's great innovation going on in the industry, and so I hope we can continue moving forward. And I mean, we've heard great things from what agencies are doing without legislation. Go to slide 5. There have been some legislation that have been passed that is very helpful in this tax piece, the PATH Act. I think will do great things as far as streamlining food donation, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Next slide. I just want to wrap up by saying, okay, so what can you do tomorrow, right? What's your take home? Everyone in this room is leaders on this issue, and we need you to educate members about why this is important. Members see this from a consumer's lens. There are so many different layers to that. But I think this, again, speaks to every single member of Congress. They all have their own individual stories. And so I really encourage you to reach out and broaden your net when it comes to the food waste world and getting people engaged. And I know that you can all do it. So I'm excited to see that. And again, this is an issue that touches every single member of Congress. And so we need to reach out to all of them, not just our friends. Thank you.
So I know we got started kind of late, so I want to make sure we have plenty of time for audience questions. But before I turn it over to the audience, I have a few questions for the panelists. You mentioned a lot of great things being done on the federal level to help reduce food waste. What have you come across that can't be done on the federal level that could be done on the state and local level? Or any opportunities?
Well, I mean, there's a ton that has to be done at the local level. And a lot of the hard work has to be done at the local level. And in particular, something that we often hear about is, of course, landfill bans. Who regulates what gets put into a landfill? And so that is often at the local level. So that's something that has to be done.
I agree, and let me say that I think the federal government's role in this is 5%, and 95% is everybody else. Who in here eats? Then you're a part of the food system, and the choices that you make every day either help the problem or they contribute to the problem. As Elise said, laws that govern the management of waste are at the state and local level. The federal government does not regulate Subtitle D or sanitary landfills, MSW landfills. That is done at the state level. Infrastructure, in order to be able to manage food that is diverted from landfilling, has to be done at the local level. Federal government cannot mandate that. Creating a system for your community is the best way to reduce food loss and waste. We heard so many innovative ideas and startups and companies that have just come into existence in order to address needs that existed in a community. And that is how this is going to happen. The federal government cannot and should not be doing that.
I guess I would add from the food safety perspective, I mentioned that the state and locals are the ones who are, state and local health departments, Department of Agriculture, who have oversight of the source of many recovered foods, that being restaurants and retail stores. So obviously those agencies, I know sometimes they're identified as an obstacle, and something that what comes up is the challenges they put before an organization that wishes to either donate or receive food. But I think they should be seen as a resource. If you can get the state and local government agents to kind of encourage a strong, trusting relationship between the donors and those that would recover the food, either food recovery organizations or the hunger relief organizations directly. If you can instill the confidence in one another, if you can encourage communication between those such that food safety is assured, and then food safety should not be an obstacle to increased donation.
So I guess my last question for you is, you talked a lot about all the different programs that you're doing right now and partnerships with private and government agencies. What gaps have you found in research that academia or nonprofits or NGOs that they can take and research?
Well, I think measurement is a key area that needs a lot of research. I mentioned to several of you, everybody likes harmonization as long as they're not the ones that have to change. And so I constantly have people come up to me at conferences like this and say, EPA needs to pass a federal ban and have no food disposed in a landfill. EPA can't do that. But what I will say to you is that what I would like to see is some data that shows how business practices have changed in areas that have landfill bans as a comparison to those areas that don't have landfill bans. Because we tell stories with data, we tell stories with success. And in order for us to make suggestions, suggest policies, look at things from a policy standpoint, we need accurate data. So measurement.
I would also say research into impacts. So I don't know how many times during this conference I've heard people say, if we didn't, how many people could be fed if we didn't have food loss and waste? How does that actually happen? If we think about water. I live in a place where there's a lot of water. If I don't drink water, it doesn't mean that someone in Africa all of a sudden has water. What is the mechanism if we reduce food loss and waste in the United States or around the world? How does that actually translate into feeding more people? How does reducing food loss and waste actually translate into saved resources? How do the actions we take to reduce food loss and waste, what are those impacts going to be? And how do we set up systems now to make sure that we're going to end up where we want to go? So how do we make sure that the investments we're making now, that we're not over-investing maybe in energy digesters or in other type of infrastructures that don't get us where we want to go? So thinking clearly about the impacts, thinking clearly about as we all gather to reduce food loss and waste, how are we setting up the mechanism systems to get us where we want to go?
One other piece, I think, is the why. Why are people wasting food? How do those, and that's really difficult data, I think, to get, going into people's homes and figuring out why those decisions are made, that they actually toss food. I think that would be helpful.
And I also think education, I promised Mom I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I watched folks out here as you ate during the week, and people struggled with, do I put this in this can? Do I put it in here? At home, we can't compost sparks. Do I put it in trash? Do I put it in recycling? Where does it go? You guys work in the food system, and there was confusion. So education is important for all of us, because hopefully all of us at some point go on vacation, and so knowing what is done in Oregon may not be done in Massachusetts. So I think education and making it easy for folks, posting things in a way so that people know what to do could be very helpful. And I think folks try here, but it can be confusing, and it can be confusing for the person who's an expert in an area.
Thank you. So I want to open it up to audience questions. I think for the sake of time, we'll take 3 questions at a time, and then we'll have panelists answer all the 3 questions after that.
Thanks. Thank you all for your panel, and thanks for everybody's insight here. One of my questions, which might be more of a comment, but it's really asking what kind of support. I work in a logistical food rescue here in the Commonwealth, so we are working while the ban is in place. What I will say is that one of the first iterations of the ban, when it was written, was not focused on the EPA hierarchy. We had Rick Sullivan spend a week with us and went back, amended some of the language, but by that time it was a little bit too late. So right now compliance with the ban is very low. And I do think that there's some help that could come at a federal level to at least steer the ban to higher compliance, or to be able to say, saving food for people rather than, just diverting to the composter, to the digester, is sufficient, when frankly it's not. And I think that's where some of the data tracking really could be helpful. So I'm wondering if that might be a way to engage at least some federal support on a state level.
Yeah, I have a question for Mary Knady. I apologize if I...
No, you got it right. That's very impressive.
Which is, I was interested to hear that the Farm Bill is likely to be the vehicle for dealing with the legislation involving date labeling. And I was wondering a couple of things. One is, could the issues dealing with food waste be expanded beyond date labeling in that bill? And secondly, who is on the committee that would be a champion of that bill and of those amendments, and what could people do to influence the passage of that between now and whenever it comes up for a vote?
Just to jump on that, within SNAP, sorry if I've already said it, but you cannot purchase hot prepared foods with SNAP. So dealing with 2 problems at the same time, if you're wanting to challenge food waste and recover a lot of prepared foods, people aren't then able to access that food unless they are going to a pantry, and we've already talked about the challenges around that. So 2 birds, 1 stone within the SNAP bill, or within Farm Bill and SNAP, expanding out those options, providing people a bit more choice and dignity within SNAP, so that they are able to access that food. And I think that then achieves a lot of the objectives in the room here around food waste.
Thank you. So I think, Mary, maybe if you want to answer the question first about including the date label legislation in the Farm Bill, and also the question related to SNAP.
So can other food waste issues be included in the Farm Bill? Absolutely. I think we're coalescing right now around the date labeling piece and kind of digging in, quite frankly, after listening to lots of good discussion at this conference. Okay, what are some other potentially easy wins on food waste on this issue that would make an impact, from transportation, to my colleague and I have been making a list here. Research grants, Good Samaritan law, maybe needs clarifying, needs a home. Refrigeration requirements, grading standards, how does that play into? Education, obviously, a big one, over and over again. Military donations, interesting one. Payments for, how do we create another revenue stream for producers that maybe can't sell to the normal market? So there are all sorts of different ideas. And we've been coalescing around date labeling and talking about that, but I don't think that's the only one. Members on the committee, you can go to houseagriculturecommittee.com and kind of check out who the other members of the committees are, who the members are. But the reality is everyone needs to talk about this, and you need to really talk to everyone about this, and we need to create a buzz on Capitol Hill, right? We had a great hearing, we had a great food waste fair, we kind of had Food Waste Week. It was the same week as Feeding in the 5,000, and then we had an Ag Committee hearing, and then we did the fair. So it was an awesome week. But we need to keep that buzz going. We need people to continue raising that with their elected officials about what's going on. And I really believe that there will be other champions that'll, once they learn more about this, once they learn about the impact in their community, will definitely grab onto this and take hold and do some great things. So
I'm just going to say something about the data. And there's a strange irony here, is that when we talk about how are we proving that we're making a difference, it's really hard to prove. And so what we tend to do is we say, okay, pounds recovered, pounds composted, pounds fed to animals, pounds sent to digesters. And so we're measuring everything except reducing and preventing. So we end up putting all the emphasis on the part of the pyramid that is not really where we want to put our emphasis. But the emphasis on prevention, that's the hardest part to measure that we're actually achieving anything. And it's what Dana talked about this morning, Dana Gunder. She said, we're not going to capture a lot of our success because it is so difficult to measure the best success, which is that prevention. And so hopefully we're not going to fall into that trap of only measuring the bottom part and not really focusing on the top. Yeah, it's difficult.
I'm not sure if any of you want to comment on the question about the organic waste bans and the. Okay, we'll see if there's any other. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Got a quick question. How do we sustain a long-term push of interest? How do we keep it going? Cheryl and Elise kind of both touched on it, of having data and showing that we have solutions that we're finding progress towards it. But it seems like there's a lot of energy now, but in the future, 10 years down the line, how do we make sure that we don't miss that in making a quick solution for something that might get developed?
I'll go first. I think it has to become a part of our lifestyle or our business practice. The same way you wash your hands before you eat your food, the same way you hopefully brush your teeth at least twice a day. It has to become a part of your lifestyle, how you manage your household, and looking at how you purchase, store, and use food on an individual basis or within your business. Businesses are in the business to make money, and they want to be able to provide food, if they're serving food, to their customers. How do you create a business plan so that you can serve the needs of your customers, be in a position to make a profit, and not incur a lot of cost having to pay to dispose of something at a later date. So creating a business process or business plan or a household plan where you minimize waste production, I think is the way we sustain it. And I want you guys to put me out of business on food, actually.
So the way you build it into government, so you make sure that government doesn't lose focus, and so that when we change administration, that all of a sudden, that's the end of the story on food loss and waste. So one thing you do is you set these long-term goals. So you set the goal for 2030. So we have this administration setting a goal for 2030. So we've sort of set that priority, and that helps us to bridge, between administrations. Then you also have these other international commitments that you're making, like with the Sustainable Development Goals, again, a goal for 2030. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, you have the G7, you have the G20. You're just building up, as I called it before, the scaffolding that keeps you moving in this direction, and so that you don't have these abrupt changes in policy as you're going between administrations. Another thing that we've done when we set up a private-public partnership for the National Virtual Resource Center, we really need a better name, I can hardly ever say it, so is to put some MOUs in place. And so that the MOUs then are between all these members of the private-public partnership and the USDA, and so it's with government. So that helps you also keep a little continuity going. So you try to set those kinds of structures in place. That's one way to do
it. I'm just going to say that in regards to measuring prevention and how the visibility of that is a real issue, is the so I was just talking about the measurement, the difficulty of measuring, getting data on what you're not using, and so. My family co-owns a renewable energy business, and so one of the things that my husband will talk about with his clients is the cheapest kilowatt there is the one you don't use. And so I think that there's some carryover in this conversation in that way, similar to the Energy Star program, is that perhaps that's a rating that we can use for industry, for farms who use the lean path process or whatnot. We can have sort of a similar, whether it's that, a replication of that or something along those lines. But I think that's a really good model and has been very effective even in so far as designs of, like now our refrigerators, most of them have freezers on the bottom, etc. And now it means our produce is right in our face. And so some multiplier effects there. But my question is for you, Mary. I struggle in a state with two very conservative senators from Arkansas, and one is on the Ag Committee, and he's very active and easier to work with than the other. So I struggle with the language of entitlement programs, and I'm fishing and wishing for another word. Do you have another word when we talk about like SNAP programs and whatnot? So in the vernacular of everyday conversation in our state legislature and whatnot, that's the vocabulary. And so could you offer another word?
Another word for entitlement.
Instead of entitlement program. I know that they have.
Perhaps you just have to talk about it in a different way.
Yeah.
And so that you don't talk about entitlements, you talk about feeding hungry people,
Right.
and get them off. Right. Carrie, do you want to jump in here?
So Carrie Halbert with Feeding America. We run into this all the time because we need our legislative agenda to work for every member of Congress, and we need to have a broad variety of asks. So we try to tailor our talking points based on who we're speaking to. It's different for Jim McGovern versus,
Tom Cotton.
Yes.
Exactly, there you go. Well, and in your state, you have two senators that have different histories with the anti-hunger community. One that's really done a lot, especially for low-income children in his state, and another that has not been as active. So what I would say is, while we believe that creating jobs and opportunities that's the right thing to do, it's very important that there's a federal safety net for people to rely on baby assistance. Point out the fact that Feeding America cannot handle the emergency food needs, or frankly the chronic food needs of people that are food insecure across this country by ourselves. It's a combined effort of the government, the nonprofit community, and the private sector to work together to create solutions that work.
Well, and you just touched on a very important piece. It doesn't all have to be a federal government solution, right? And we're talking about that in this space as well. It doesn't always have to come from the federal government. There's great innovation that is happening within the private sector, and you should love that.
So, you see how long it took you to say that?
Yeah, no, it's not.
My point is that, like, as a coalition of people who are foodies, I'm challenged to come up with a vocabulary word that includes all that.
Don't let it stop you. Don't let his, you're gonna break him down at some point, I know you are, and like really, truly, because if you continue, the challenges in these offices, right, the squeaky wheel, kind of syndrome, and they're the ones who get attention. Oh, this person keeps calling, gotta do something for them. Great. Just continue being that voice that they hear from. Annoy them if need be. Hopefully, at some point, they will actually say, gosh, I'm hearing from her a lot. There's got to be some truth to this. So maybe I'm overly optimistic, but I just keep going, keep trying.
I'm just saying that I feel like we need a better brand pushback. That like they branded such a negative word that resonates, that whoever comes up with it, I'll use it.
Ask him if he's on a mortgage. What's that? Does he have a mortgage? That's an entitlement. Is he buying food with that? Yeah.
No, I'll ask him.
Well, we're out of time, so I want to thank our wonderful panelists, and we're going to start the final plenary in about 5 minutes. Thank you.